The true meaning of Gethsemane. Why did Jesus sweat drops of blood? Did you know that the most intense moment of Jesus Christ's life didn't happen on the cross, but in a quiet garden in the middle of the night? In Gethsemane, he faced such a crushing battle that he sweat drops of blood. This isn't just a story, it's the beginning of the greatest sacrifice in human history. Today, I'm going to reveal what really happened that night and how it can transform your life. But wait, have you ever wondered what the cup was that Jesus asked the Father to take away, or why Judas chose to betray him with a kiss? Get ready, because in the next few minutes, you'll uncover the secrets of Gethsemane, understand the depth of the pain Jesus endured, and discover what it all means for you personally. Have you ever stopped to think about why the Garden of Gethsemane was chosen for one of the most anguishing moments in history? It wasn't by chance. The name Gethsemane holds a powerful secret. It means oil press, a place where olives were crushed to produce oil. While this might have been common in the culture of the time, in this context, it holds a deep, profound meaning. Why did Jesus have to face this intense moment precisely there? Imagine a seemingly peaceful garden, surrounded by the song of birds and the stillness of the night, yet carrying a spiritual weight so immense it continues to make us reflect today. Gethsemane wasn't just a place for prayer, it was the beginning of a spiritual battle beyond human comprehension. That place, where nature whispered calm, witnessed Christ's inner struggle against something far greater than we can fathom. The burden of all human sin. And why the name oil press? What does it reveal about what happened there? Could it be tied to the drops of blood Jesus sweat, or the cup he mentioned, asking if it could pass from him? Gethsemane is more than a physical location. It's an enigma, a meeting point between human anguish and total submission to God's will. It's the doorway to understanding the ultimate sacrifice that was about to unfold. Gethsemane wasn't just a place for prayer. It was the prelude to a sacrifice that would echo throughout eternity. Every detail of that night pointed to something greater, something inevitable. Imagine Jesus walking into that garden, fully aware of what awaited him. Under the shadows of the olive trees, he wasn't just praying. He was stepping into the spiritual battlefield where the fate of all humanity would be decided. The scene appeared tranquil, but there was a palpable tension in the air. Gethsemane wasn't chosen by coincidence. Every element of that place symbolized what was about to happen. Just as olives are crushed in the press to produce pure oil, Jesus would be pressed by the weight of our sins, his life poured out like the most precious oil, illuminating the path to redemption. This moment also reveals something crucial. Gethsemane was where justice and mercy began to meet. The cup Jesus spoke of in his prayer wasn't just a symbol. It foreshadowed the cup of God's wrath, which he was about to drink in our place. It was the anticipation of a sacrifice no one else could bear. And even in the face of this terrifying prospect, he didn't turn away. But why did Jesus choose to begin this journey in that particular garden? Perhaps because Gethsemane, with its oil press and shadowed stillness, was the perfect setting to show us the real cost of salvation. What seemed like just the beginning of a night of prayer was, in reality, the announcement of an unparalleled sacrifice. As the night deepened, something profound was unfolding. Jesus' prayer, his words, his actions, everything pointed to what was to come. It's hard to imagine the weight he bore that night in Gethsemane. While his disciples slept, he faced something no one else has ever faced: the crushing weight of humanity's sin. The Gospel of Luke gives us a striking detail of this moment. In Luke 22:44, it says, "And being in agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was, as it were, great drops of blood falling down to the ground." But what does this truly mean? Sweating blood, known scientifically as hematidrosis, is a rare condition that occurs under extreme emotional or physical distress. It was as though Jesus' body itself reflected the spiritual battle taking place within him. That blood seeping through his pores wasn't just a physical sign, it was a profound symbol of the sacrifice already in motion. Even before he reached the cross, Jesus had begun to shed his blood for us. Think about this: the Creator of the universe, kneeling on the ground with drops of blood trickling down his face. It wasn't just the fear of physical pain that tormented him. It was the knowledge of what it meant to drink the cup of God's wrath. He knew that for a moment he would take upon himself the sin of all humanity. Imagine the unimaginable: Jesus, the Son of God, experiencing separation from his Father, a reality that had never existed throughout all eternity. This anguish was beyond human comprehension. It was spiritual, overwhelming, and unlike anything we can truly grasp. Gethsemane became the witness to it all. Each drop of blood that fell to the ground seemed to whisper the cost of what was about to happen. Every moment of that intense prayer revealed Jesus' unwavering obedience to God's will, even in the face of suffering beyond imagination. But why didn't he walk away? How did he endure such immense pain? The answer lies in the next chapter of this story, where we see the depth of his solitude, even in the midst of his closest friends. At the peak of his anguish in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus prayed a prayer that captures the very essence of his mission on earth. In Matthew 26:39 he says, "O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt." This prayer echoes both pain and surrender, a cry of distress and a declaration of total submission to God's plan. But what does this prayer truly mean? And why is it so central to our faith? There, in the stillness of the night, Jesus confronted the terror of the cup of divine wrath. He understood that this cup wasn't just about the physical suffering of the cross. It represented the separation from God and the weight of humanity's sins. Yet his prayer wasn't a plea for escape. It was a demonstration of complete trust and obedience to God's will. He showed us that even in the face of indescribable suffering, God's will must always be the priority. This moment in Gethsemane teaches us an incredible lesson about faith. Jesus didn't hide his pain or pretend to be emotionally ready for what was coming. Instead, he was brutally honest with God, expressing his human fear while still submitting fully to God's plan. His submission wasn't weakness. It was the greatest strength and faith the world has ever seen. Jesus' prayer also challenges us. How many times have we prayed, asking God to remove our struggles, but not fully surrendered to his will? Gethsemane reminds us that true Christian faith isn't about avoiding pain. It's about trusting God through it, even in our darkest moments. And here comes the mystery that leads us to the next part of the story. How could Jesus remain faithful to God's will, even when it meant enduring the most painful betrayal of all? In the quiet of that night, the Garden of Gethsemane was suddenly interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps and voices. An armed crowd, led by someone who should have been a friend, came toward him. Judas Iscariot, one of the 12. Judas stepped forward, betraying Jesus with something intimate and seemingly innocent: a kiss. The scene described in Matthew 26:49-50 is shocking. And forthwith he came to Jesus and said, "Hail, Master," and kissed him. And Jesus said unto him, "Friend, wherefore art thou come?" Why did Jesus call him friend? This simple yet profound detail reveals the depth of Christ's love, even in the face of such betrayal. While anyone else might have responded with anger or outrage, Jesus chose love. He knew that Judas was playing a part in God's divine plan, but that didn't erase the heartache of being handed over by someone he considered close. Think of what this must have done to Jesus' heart, already burdened with the weight of his spiritual and physical agony. Judas's betrayal wasn't just a historical moment. It reflects the human condition. Each of us, in our own way, has betrayed God through our choices and sins. Like Judas, we often make those choices in exchange for fleeting things, much like the 30 pieces of silver. What makes this moment even more powerful is that despite being betrayed, Jesus didn't hesitate or turn back. He allowed himself to be arrested, choosing the path of love and sacrifice. This was no accident. Jesus willingly walked this road, knowing it was the only way to bring us redemption. As Jesus was led away by the guards, the darkness seemed to close in around him. The disciples fled, leaving him completely alone. But what seemed like a moment of defeat was actually the beginning of something extraordinary. Jesus' arrest was the first step in a sacrifice that would change the course of history. In Gethsemane, Jesus spoke of something terrifying, the cup. In Matthew 26:39, he prayed, "O my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me." But what was this cup that was so dreadful it caused Jesus to sweat blood and pray in agony? It wasn't just any cup. It was something far beyond human understanding. Jesus was referring to the cup of God's wrath, a powerful symbol used throughout the Bible to represent divine judgment against sin. In his words, Jesus showed he understood exactly what he was about to face. The cup he was to drink contained all the guilt, condemnation, and wrath that should have been ours. Imagine a vessel holding the weight of every sin ever committed, past, present, and future. And yet Jesus willingly chose to drink it, absorbing it all in our place. Every last drop of his blood was shed out of love for each of us. But this cup Jesus spoke of represented something even deeper: separation from God. For a moment, he would experience the absence of the perfect communion he had shared with his Father from all eternity. He would be treated as guilty, as if he were sin itself, so that we could be made right with God. Isaiah 53:5 powerfully captures this. He was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The cup of God's wrath was the cost of our redemption. Jesus didn't just bear the weight of our sin, he also faced the judgment we deserved. By accepting this cup, he revealed the incredible depth of God's love and his willingness to pay the ultimate price for our salvation. But this wasn't a passive acceptance. Gethsemane was the battlefield where the true spiritual struggle unfolded, and it was there, in that garden, that Jesus triumphed, even before he reached the cross. What really happened in that moment of spiritual warfare? How did Jesus' victory in Gethsemane pave the way for the cross? Gethsemane wasn't just the place where Jesus prayed intensely. It was the stage for a cosmic battle that went far beyond anything we can fully understand. As Jesus prayed, something unseen was unfolding. The forces of darkness were in full motion in that garden. This was not just a fight between flesh and spirit, it was a battle for the very destiny of humanity. As Paul reminds us in Ephesians 6:12, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." And in that crucial moment, this battle reached its peak. Every word of Jesus' prayer was like a sword confronting the darkness. He knew the cross was near, but he also knew he had to first overcome in Gethsemane. Here, Jesus wasn't just facing the prospect of physical suffering, he was carrying the weight of humanity's sin and the divine wrath that would be poured out on him. The enemy was watching, hoping to make him give up, trying to thwart his mission of redemption. Yet, in that very garden, amid agony and bloody sweat, Jesus declared victory. When he prayed in Matthew 26:39, "Not as I will, but as thou wilt," he sealed Satan's defeat. This was a moment of absolute obedience, where God's will triumphed over every dark force trying to stop humanity's salvation. Gethsemane teaches us that the most intense spiritual battles are won through complete submission to God. Jesus, as our ultimate example, showed us that in prayer, trust, and a determination to fulfill God's will, we find the strength to overcome even our darkest moments. The victory won in the Garden of Gethsemane still echoes today, calling us to live a faith that overcomes fear and sin. But the battle didn't end there. It continued at Calvary, where Jesus' sacrifice would secure eternal redemption for all who believe. And this is where our journey of faith connects directly with His, uniting the submission in the garden with the victory on the cross. The choice Jesus made in Gethsemane challenges us. Are we willing to surrender to God's will as He did, or do we continue to hold on to our own ways? His sacrifice calls us to respond. If this message touched your heart, take a moment now to pray. Reflect on Jesus' incredible love and what He endured for you. And if you haven't yet given your life to Him, don't wait any longer. Jesus is waiting for you with open arms. Before you go, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos that will strengthen your faith. Share this message with someone who needs to hear about God's love and what Jesus went through for us in Gethsemane. May God bless you.